You're listening to The Talent Sync. The Talent Sync is a talent board and job sync collaborative podcast production about anything and everything recruiting and hiring. Literally the kitchen sink on how all things in talent acquisition work together, should work together, and how sometimes they don't. Now it's time to sync up with your hosts, Kevin Grossman and Leah Daniels. Today's topic is about the intersection of expectations and experience. Enjoy the podcast. Leah, hello there. Good to see you and hear you. How are you doing?
I am fabulous. It is fabulous to see you too. It's been ages. I feel like I've missed you.
It feels like it's been ages.
Oh,
it's kind of been ages. It feels like it's been ages. And now we're tipping into fall time. Can you believe that? I mean, the year is nearly over. Well, just almost over. 3/4 over, right? What? I don't talk about it? All right. I won't talk about it. But I got to tell you, this is kind of relates to our topic. I know we're going to talk about expectations and the realities of expectations with candidates, with employees, and what they're actually experiencing at the end of the day, right? So that intersection of expectations and experience. So we had new ceiling fans installed earlier this year in our upstairs bedrooms. We don't really need air conditioning where we live because it's pretty mild most of the time. It never gets humid like it does for you on the East Coast, right? But we always wanted them because there are times when it gets stuffy upstairs, even with the windows open. So we had ceiling fans installed, and ours has a remote for it. It's not a wall switch. It's actually just a remote for it. That's what we decided to do. And the remote is always in the same friggin' place every single time until today. And I just was flipping out because I'm like, nobody moves this thing, or not supposed to. Now I blame one of my children. But the good news is, the end game is that I found it. But my expectation is that both my wife and I put it in the same place every single time. This is where it is, so we can use it because there is no wall switch for it. So I found it buried in the center of the bed. And I know sometimes at night, our daughters will talk to her friends, not be in her room, but she's actually upstairs on our bed talking to her friends, and she must have had it, buried it in the middle of the bed, whatever, but I found it. But the expectation of that it's always there, it's always where it's going to be, is something that I think a lot about, right? And when we talk about candidate experience research that we do, and we've done for years now, and also the expectations of most candidates and employees as consumers of recruiting and hiring and trying to get the job and keep the job. We expect things to be there, to be the way that we're also used to having them. That's kind of my segue.
I was going to say, and it's interesting, right? Because that's both good and bad things, right? So like in my house, I expect to never know where the TV remote is ever. I just expect to never know because God only knows where it's been left because I've got other people moving it around. And that, I think, on both sides goes to expectations, right? I've always talked about, poor candidates, they apply to 100 jobs for a reason because we taught them that that's the expectation. You have to do that. So it goes both ways, right? Cuts both ways, both positive and negative.
The expectation, though, as we get into this topic a little bit more, it has increased, though, when it comes to the job search. When it comes to remaining at an organization and the reasons of why I want to stay there or why I want to leave, but the expectations of how we run the rest of our lives today. It's how AI is impacting our lives on the consumer level, too, not just in our industry, in recruiting and hiring. But we expect that these things are easy, they're simple. I can get to them. I can order something and tomorrow it's on my doorstep. It's true. And I know it's kind of been talked about for a long time, but the consumerization of life has actually set an expectation, I think, much higher, and that recruiting and hiring has never come close to meeting at the end of the day at all. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So, for example, this is the time of the year, Leah, where we're doing our data reviews with companies that participated in our benchmark research. Each one gets an individual session. We're walking them through what we see. We have discussions, right? And we learn a little bit more about their day-to-day operations because we're just reading the data, which tells us what we think it tells us, but then to hear what they say. And, you know, the reality is that there's so many different things that the different job types they're hiring for can be, even if they have a standard, structured, consistent process from application to screening to interview, it still will vary and timelines will vary. And that we've seen the overall experience deteriorate from last year even to this year. It's not quite a candidate market anymore. I understand that, but it's gone down. But I think and somebody asked me the other day, do you think that with the younger generations in the workforce, expectations are different in hiring? And I said, I don't think it's just them. I think it's everybody. I think that our expectations are like, I apply, I want to hear back within a reasonable time frame, within a week or two, not weeks or months later, which is still the status quo today. I can't tell you how many times, and then I'll be quiet and let you chime in too, because I'm getting on my soapbox now. How many organizations still have this culture of we're going to hold on to everybody that applies until I fill the rec and then disposition them all?
So I got in a conversation and I have not done the research. So I'm going to say this out loud and then I'm going to regret everything I'm about to say.
See, you're not supposed to lead with that, by the way.
No, I'm leading with it. I'm just telling you, it's a disclaimer. So I was under the impression, and I have to go do the research because I just heard this last week. I was under the impression that for companies who are held under OFCCP, that you actually can't disposition out candidates until you've made the final selection. Anyone who's qualified. You can disposition out unqualified.
That's the difference.
But once you pick qualified, like that group has to stay open until the completion of the hiring process. Now, I was recently told that is not actually true, that is in fact one of those sort of things that somebody said and has become a thing and everybody believes, but is not real. So I have some to-dos to go and understand that. But it's interesting because you and I had this great conversation early in our relationship when we first met about how candidates do not understand or appreciate some of the legalities that these companies are held to in the process that they have to go through because of these legalities. Like, why do I have to answer the EEO every time I apply for a job? How come I have to answer? Like, there's all these questions I have to answer. Why do I have to do this? And it's because the company's being held to a standard that the candidates don't understand. And no one has ever done a great job, I think, of really communicating to candidates why this is part of the process. They just know they have to answer the question every time. It's very annoying.
And this is why there is such a gap in, again, expectation versus reality. Because you're right. It's the one thing that we don't talk enough about. We don't talk enough about the compliance that companies have to adhere to in the recruiting and hiring process. It's the least glamorous part of everything we talk about in recruiting, but it is the super critical one because nobody wants the EEOC to be knocking on their door and charging them with discrimination or whatever that is. So you were right about that. And that's above my pay grade when it comes to knowing that specificity of the OFCCP. I don't think that's true either, though.
But I do know that many, many companies use that as their policy or their guiding principle.
Well, I kind of heard that today on one of our review calls, and I didn't say anything because I have to go do my own research again. But the difference of what you're saying, and we need to know if I need to know if that's true or not. I don't think it is, but the difference is between those who are just not qualified and have been deemed not qualified out of the gate are the ones that need to, and are that we see are the highest rated companies in our research are dispositioning within 3 to 5 days. The not qualified, whether it's a human scanning, it's auto screen. Unfortunately, for a lot of companies that have higher volume, and you know this better than I do, that they're not necessarily, the reality is they're not necessarily looking at every single person who's applied.
Time for a talent sync break.
Hey everybody, Kevin Grossman here, president of Talent Board and the Candidate Experience Awards. Our 2023 Candidate Experience Benchmark Research Program will open in January and run through August 31st. To learn more on how your organization can participate, go to thetalentboard.org.
Break time's over. Now back to the talent sync.
No, they're not often looking at many of them.
It's like
questions.
every 5, every 10, every...
I have this story. I'm not going to name names, but I had somebody recently tell me that candidates read job descriptions, think about the role, and then apply very purposefully. And as I was recently told, I'm not the nicest person in the world. And I was like, that's wrong.
That's
wrong.
totally wrong. What do you?
It's totally wrong.
Who said that about you? Come on.
Are we talking about the mean part? Because that's probably true. But
well, you've never been mean to me, so thank goodness. There you go.
The quote I got the other day was, "You have a lot of great energy, but you're just mean, very mean."
No, I think there's a difference between. Well, that's like but that's like calling you your bossy versus being a leader. I mean, you're also very direct, which is interpreted as being mean to be some.
Absolutely.
So anyway.
The story goes, this woman tells me that people read and think about every job and they apply purposefully. And I was like, that's wrong. But what I realized is that that's what she does, right? Many people internalize their own process is how everyone does things. And she is thoughtful about which job she applies to. And that's because she's a white collar professional and she's been in the business for many, many years. And like, she is very selective in her next step and her next role and all of these things. And meanwhile, as you talk to many companies, I've had 400 people apply for this security guard position and they must have a license to conceal carry, and they don't. 380 of them don't, right? So recruiters actually don't have the capacity to go through 380 to figure out which other 20 do have that one particular skill. And so they do use qualifying questions. The answer to those questions does determine whether or not you go forward. And if you don't, you get that autoresponder. Thank you so much. You're not qualified for this role. Have a nice day. Here are 17 other jobs you are qualified for. Would you like to apply for one of them? Right? Because they're not bad candidates. They're just not the right person for that role.
No. Well, and they're literally not qualified for what is deemed necessary for the job. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter whether they could do the job or not. That's not necessarily the point. And for something that's specific like that, if people, especially those who need certifications, the list goes on. We talked about something before we started this podcast that I want to lean into as well, because this goes back to expectation versus experience. That every year, anybody who's ever been in talent acquisition knows that you're going to get hate mail from candidates. I mean, especially those you're saying no to, or they're just not getting a response from you. It happens every year. I always kind of make the joke that we're all thick-skinned TA pros. We've been dealing with it for a long time. The reality, though, is that, and you mentioned to me about, giving every single applicant feedback. But
hard to do.
And it's completely unrealistic. It's not only hard to do, and even with automation, I would actually argue, and this is in the defense actually of every employer, and I'm sorry, candidates, if you are not qualified, and again, take out serial appliers that are just applying for jobs willy-nilly, whether they are qualified or not, take those out of the equation, because every company has their own codes for those people. I remember joking about that years ago with TA folks. But the individuals who really do believe, maybe I have something for this job. Like, I need a job. It's because a lot of times that's what it's about, too. I need a job. I'm going to apply for these 5 to 10. I have some of the skills. Maybe I can get, if I can get a screening or an interview. But the reality is that if I'm not qualified, you're not getting feedback, kids. It's just not going to happen, especially for companies of any hiring volume and scale. Maybe smaller shops that have, 10 applications here or there, they can review and respond in kind if they want. That's different. But for large multinational organizations that are hiring around the world and have thousands of applications a month, that's not going to happen. You are not going to get feedback. Now, you're just not going to get feedback. It's not going to happen.
I do think that candidates have a hard time. So there's some math here that I always think is interesting, right? Even with our current economic state, the slowdown of hiring, the layoffs that we have seen, we are still in a position in the United States where we have more open jobs than we have available candidates.
Correct. That is true, but still
a true statement,
yep.
Right? And candidates still know this, even if they know the world has changed a little, they're still aware. And in their mind, that means there's a one candidate, one job situation happening, right? Like, oh, I should be able to get a feedback. I mean, how many candidates could possibly be applying for this job? And there's a secondary reality, which is many of these positions are still getting hundreds or thousands of applicants. And they just can't possibly conceptualize that. It's a really hard thing to get your head around that 1,000 people could apply for this one job.
You mean the candidates themselves get their head around it?
Yeah, they can't get their head around that, right? And so in their mind, I can't get feedback. Like, how many candidates could you possibly have to give feedback to? Because even though they have now applied to 100 jobs, it's hard to get your head around the math that so has everyone else. And so while there are less candidates than there are jobs, there are far more applications than there are jobs. And that's where the math gets crazy.
It does. You're right about that. I think the whole point about candidates have a hard time getting their head around the fact that I maybe am one of 500, 1,000 people applying for a job. I mean, and that's true, but all I care about as a job candidate is me. I don't care about the other 999. I mean, I don't care about the other nine. I care about me, and I care about getting the job. And this is the reality that I talk about with companies every year, is that most won't. So we literally, again, have been saying this for a long time. We're in the business of no. We're in the business of no. We say no 99 out of 100 times on average to those folks, and it sucks. It really, really does. And a candidate only cares about themselves. They only care about getting hired. And most
they only care about yes.
That's all they care about is getting the job, right? And that's and ultimately, though, everything that a company does impacts their perception of fairness and whether or not they felt it was positive or negative experience. And employers control those dials. It's not easy at the point of application because that's a very limited experience for candidates, especially those not qualified. And they should, and I would still argue as the expression goes, till the cows come home. I don't even know what the heck that means, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you know what that means when the cows come home?
End of the day.
Maybe that's what it is. Is that what it means? Maybe that's what it means.
I don't know.
At the end of the day, I don't have to look that one up too. But the fact of the matter is that the candidates, that is ultimately all that they care about. But the companies, though, the expectation, and I actually truly believe, I mean, now that we're starting to kind of get into this year's data, and we have 240,000 candidate responses this year globally. And what's clear is that the frustration level so far in our kind of early analysis as we start to prep for the reports that we put out, it's higher than it's ever been. And it's super high. And the resentment rate as we measure it is increasing everywhere globally. And it is. And I just feel like, if you, regardless of what kinds of jobs you're hiring for, if you know and you've identified that group that is not qualified and you're not going to screen them any further, and then you've got to get it into your process to reject them in a timely fashion. You have to do that, and then spend your time focusing on the people you are going to screen and hire, because those are the people you're ultimately going to pick from to hire. Let the other folks know. Let them go do their own thing. They're not going to magically become qualified if you're holding on to everybody. And again, I don't believe that that's actually, like we were talking earlier about the OFCCP. I don't think that's a thing. I
have something for you. So HR.com came out with some data recently, right? And it's called what candidates actually want. And I love this because they just asked the question, and it's really interesting. So there's a couple surprises in here for me also. What they said is 56% want an easy job application process. That's up 8%. Fair.
Of course. And it aligns with our data.
55% they want great communication, including prompt feedback and follow-ups.
True. And again, but there's caveats to that. I mean, they want that, but only a subset are going to get that, though. Actually,
I think prompt though is fair.
Prompt. Everybody should get prompt. I agree with you.
Everyone should get that.
Everybody should get prompt. Totally.
49% would like it to be easy to schedule an interview, and for the love of everybody, there are tools for this.
Time for a Talent Sync break.
Hi, Talent Sync listeners. I just wanted to share a bit about JobSync with you all. JobSync helps companies get more quality candidates out of their job board advertising and automates a variety of manual recruitment tasks by solving for the very low conversion rate challenges most companies experience on their career site. JobSync integrates your entire application, including all of your questions, directly into the various job boards' quick apply processes, providing you with fully completed applications directly into your ATS and resulting in 2 to 5 times more candidates while dropping your cost per application by half. This helps return up to 10 hours a week back into your recruiter's time through custom automations that are based on your business-specific recruiting processes. JobSync works with most major ATSs like Workday, SuccessFactors, and Taleo, CRMs, programmatic platforms, and job boards like Indeed and Zip. You can check out jobsync.com to learn more.
Break time's over. Now back to the Talent Sync.
Especially today there are. Especially today there are. And I'm surprised that, I mean, it's probably what you're reading off to were multiple, like, select all that apply questions. Because I would argue that, everybody wants to have it easy to schedule an interview. I mean,
how could you not?
So that's probably, they're choosing from a list and select all the apply, but all those things align with what candidates tell us.
Here's my favorite one though. 27% would like no cover letter required. Does that mean that there's still about 70% who want a cover letter?
I know. I don't think that's what that means. I think it just means that, because that's kind of a holdover. I know that there's a whole, again, there's a lot of good people in the cottage industry of helping candidates write resumes and cover letters. I don't want to take anything away from that, but I'm telling you, and it's not something that we are directly measuring in our data and research, but I know more and more TA leaders in their teams, anecdotally at least, nobody looks at cover letters anymore. They just don't.
I have a fun story. We work with lots of companies just like you do. And I was talking to an organization recently. They do not require a cover letter. Okay, great. That's probably a good choice. They said that their hiring managers cannot align in their mind about this and rate candidates less if they've not included one. They think candidates should be providing one, even though it's optional. And so they're actually having to retrain hiring managers around like the world we live in today, and that you should not be giving out someone a black mark for not including a cover letter.
Well, because again, it's kind of it's a vestige of what we used to do, right? It's an old transactional thing that as a candidate, I have a paper resume and I have a cover letter for a job that I want, whether from an hourly position I can understand something in that realm for management positions, but that's not literally a cover letter per se though, right? There's a lot more that's going to go into that.
If it's optional, it's optional. You can't judge them. If it's required, it's required.
I think one thing we haven't mentioned, and I think it's really important, that the reality of why your network is so important. Because, it's one thing to applying cold that's a tough one, right? Applying cold to a job that you have no other connection to, you're just interested in the job and the company. And maybe, as an external perspective, and even internal folks get passed over too. But, we can't forget the power of knowing people and connecting with people and being able to get an in. That still doesn't guarantee you're going to get the job, but it definitely helps a lot more than going in cold.
But you know what else, which I think is something we should talk about? When you have someone you actually also have someone setting your expectations in a way that someone coming in cold wouldn't have that advantage. They're going to tell you what the culture is like. They're going to tell you who the people are. They're going to tell you what the expectations are in a way it's so real that you can't get through the recruiting organization that's processing so many humans through the engine that is. And that I think then kind of lays into the next part, which is the new employee expectations, right? As you in experience. So as a new employee, there's this great article that came out today that said you have 44 days with a new employee to make them feel at home, basically, so they'll stay. And they need to find a network. They need to find some humans that they relate to. And if you come in already knowing someone, if you come in through a referral, you actually have a pre-baked connection, right? You're not now relying on creating a new network internally. You already have this person who's going to kind of help you get there, guide you through, answer your questions, again, set expectations. And I think that that's a big deal. And when you look at all the data around why is it that referrals have a higher percentage of hire, have a longer tenure on average, I think it's because they come in with this pre-baked network, this set of expectations that is far more aligned to reality than you could ever get from somebody coming in cold with all the optimism in the world.
You're totally right about that. And that's why your employer branding and your recruitment marketing efforts need to involve a lot more transparency too. You need to, because even if you're coming in cold, if I'm reading your career site and watching those videos of those employee testimonials, I do want some reality from that. That's why the best thing is to know somebody and get that information from them that's already inside. But you definitely want to have that. To that point of what the piece that you were talking about, you have 44 days to lose.
Yeah. It's that bamboo study that just came out.
I think what's important about that is what happens before day one too, because and we talk about this with companies every year, if you are just checking boxes, paperwork, drug check, background check. And before the day one, before they start, they've already accepted the offer and you're doing these things. That's just not enough anymore for whether from hourly positions all the way up. And that's why we've seen an increase of companies losing people before day one. So the nurturing, the engagement, the immersion in the company, the meeting peers, as much as you can do, even when it's done remotely, before day one, in our data and research, it improves their overall onboarding rating at that stage, and I would argue a retention starter out of the gate. That's why now, when I hear companies that they have somebody that's responsible for pre-boarding or a team, and they're doing more in nurturing and engagement activities before day one, that's really where the bar has been raised, an expectation, and where experience should align for those individuals before they start. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to get a fancy gift from, I don't know why I was thinking Macy's. Why is Macy's a fancy gift store? I don't really know why I said that.
Is it still a store?
I don't even know. It is actually. Macy's is still a store. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, they're still around. There's actually one locally for us. Yeah.
The end caps of the malls have had a rough go over the last few years.
The Macy's is still around, but wherever that fancy welcome gift is from, good God. Besides that, though, there are those things you can do. And I'll tell you what is super surprising, and this is coming from our data from companies that are actually leaning in to theoretically want to improve, that are participating and getting data, that candidates who are before their start date, only 40% say they get a call from their hiring manager before day one.
Oh, it's interesting.
Only 40%.
I think it's because people, you're in a hiring cycle, you get through it. I've hired people too. I think I've done this. You hire them, they sign, you're like, great, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And then you go off because you're busy, you're doing other things, and you just think it's a done deal. It is a really hard idea that it isn't a done deal, even though everything's signed. I remember in 2011, I worked at Bullhorn at the time. Amazing company. It's an ATS. They've grown. And we had somebody sign the offer and not show up. I remember this because it was such a scandal. 2011, this was scandalous. And now you hear about it far more often that it happens, and it's less scandal now. But it's actually something that is interesting, right? Because this is now the experience. It's the human experience that we need to adjust our expectations.
It's scandalous, and it's a fancy gift from Macy's. So
that's all the things that are important.
That's all.
Yeah, we've covered everything today, actually.
And where is that? And where is that doggone remote? Right?
Oh,
it better be exactly where I left it there. Or I'm going to just flip out. And I did flip out. And my wife was helping me look for it. And I'm like, we finally found it. And I'm like, now I'm going to tie a string around it to the bed frame. And this is where it remains.
Here's what you actually need to do, because this is what I've done for my TV remote. I have just actually moved it onto my phone. So I have the app on my phone. So figure out how to Bluetooth this thing up so you can have it on your phone.
That's true. Actually, that's good. I should research that. I wonder if I could do that on the fan. That's a really good point.
I bet you can. I bet you could. You can hook that to Alexa. You can actually just tell Alexa to turn on your fan.
Oh, it was so funny the other day. My wife, instead of saying Alexa, she's like, Alaska, can you tell me where? I'm like, Alaska? What is that?
We've upgraded her name.
A fancy gift from Alaska. Well, listen, Leah, this has been great, and I know a great conversation, and so excited that we're back at it again, and looking forward to more topics to come. So it was great talking with you. Thanks again for talking about expectation and experience.
I love it. The intersection of the two, right, man? It's great seeing you. Great talking to you. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Talent Sync podcast, a Talent Board and Job Sync collaborative podcast production. More episodes soon.